before that mission, Jeffrey was down at the flight line. I came down to the flight line without a hat. He said, "Where's your hat?" I said, "Somebody took it at the officers' club last night. I don't have a hat." He said, "Here, Rosie, you take my hat. It's a lucky hat." Well, you know what happened. We were shot down. So, while I was in the hospital at Oxford, down the hall comes Jeffrey with 3 other people from the 100th Bomb Group. And I thought he was going to say, "Rosie, where's my hat?" But instead he came over, greeted me, hugged me, and he had a gallon of ice cream. Our PX guy, Al Paul, was notorious for doing things. I think he swapped the Jeep with the Navy and got an ice cream machine. And I was the hero of the hospital because I dispensed ice cream at that time. And Jeffrey never asked me about the hat. I returned to the base after 5 weeks, and I couldn't fly. My arm had been in the sling. I had no power in my arm. I couldn't fly. And I was assigned to the 13th Bomb Wing, where General Hugnam was. And I was there about 3 weeks, and I didn't like it. I didn't feel as though I was contributing. I was assigned to be the operations officer. And I went to see General Hugnam, and I asked to be reassigned to the 100th, and he was nice enough to send me back. And I returned as the squadron commander of the 418th Squadron. And the next interesting mission, I guess, was the one on February 3rd, 1945. On that mission, our group led the 3rd Bomb Division. There were 1,000 planes in the air, one of the biggest raids on Berlin during the war. And I recall that everything went so smoothly. We assembled at our checkpoint, Splasher 6 it was called. It was over the Wash. We circled. We used to fire flares, and the planes would join the formation one at a time. They each had a designated spot in the group to fly formation. And as we circled, slowly the planes gathered into the group. And once the group was gathered, we had to pick up the other 2 groups in our wing as we were leading the entire 3rd Division. And then we had to pick up the other planes from the other wings in the division. And as we headed out, we had to pick up the fighter escort. And all of that went so smoothly. It was a beautiful day. The sun was shining, and everything went smoothly. And we approached the target. It was a beautiful sight. You saw these streams of what are those called? The streams of, I can't think of the term now. And it was a very thrilling sight, and we approached the target, Berlin, and as we approached, the plane was hit, our plane was hit. We had fire on the plane. There were 2 dead on the plane. We continued and bombed the target and turned the lead over to our deputy leader because we were in serious difficulty. We couldn't fly the plane at all. And I headed east because we were briefed that the Russians had crossed the Vistula and were heading toward Germany, toward the Oder River. Knowing that we couldn't return to our base, we headed eastward. And I found out 40 years later, the pilot John Ernst, a superb lead pilot. His whole crew were superb. John Ernst, I had everybody bail out. I stayed at the controls. And when John went out, he went out the bomb bay doors and he gashed his leg. And at a reunion 40 years later, he told me that he was taken to a Russian field hospital and had his leg amputated without the benefit of anesthesia. They gave him some vodka. And then he told me that one of the crew had been lynched. He came out of the plane, his parachute caught in a tree, and he was lynched by German civilians. And a few were picked up by the Germans and were prisoners of war. I ultimately met 2 others in the crew who came out with me. When the crew had bailed out, I tried to get out. The plane was, there was smoke and fire in the plane, and I knew how to get out. I couldn't fly the plane. I couldn't land the plane. I couldn't do anything with it. And the plane was in the spin. I was pinned down by the centrifugal force, and I had to fight my way, force my way up front where there was at least 1 dead, and toward the hatch opening there, and force my way out. And when I got out, I thought I was in heaven. I was away from the plane, the smoke, the noise, and it was suddenly quiet and peaceful in the air, and suddenly I hit the ground. And when I hit the ground, I saw 3 soldiers approaching me. And one of them, when he came close, lifted his gun and was about to strike me. And I noticed that they had red stars on their hat. And I yelled, "Roosevelt, Churchill, Stalin, Lucky Strike, Coca-Cola, and bomb in Berlin." And they stopped and recognized that I was American. And with that, they helped me up and hugged me and took care of me, took me to a Russian field hospital. My arm had been broken again. I landed very hard, and they put a cast on there. And they took us to what was sort of a farmhouse, and there was a woman who took care of us and fed us. We called her Hamburger Hannah, because she fed us hamburgers, breakfast, lunch, and dinner. I'm sure it was horse meat. And we got tired of it. But she treated us very well. And we finally, I came down with reaction to penicillin that the Russians had given me. I broke out into hives. It was very impure, I guess. And I ended up in a hospital. It was a former German hospital, and stayed there for about 5 days. And ultimately, there was an Air Force. I was brought into Poland. It was a Russian Air Force unit, and they invited us to their field. They heard that I was a major and that I had just been shot down. And I didn't know it, but the Russians men used to dance together, and they had vodka. It was the worst vodka it was like gasoline. It was a GI issue for the Russians. I had never drunk before. I didn't drink during the war, but I had to drink there. And we ended up by dancing together and being very dizzy. And I remember they put us up at night on boards over 2 wooden horses. And one of the wooden horses was lower than the other. And in the course of the evening, we rolled down. We would lay in one heap on the floor. But it was a great occasion. And from there, they took me to a town in Poland. And I could see Posen being under rocket fire at night. It was a very imposing sight. And as we traveled, we saw one camp after another with barbed wire around it. I don't know who these people were behind it, but the